Well, good morning, afternoon, evening, whenever you're watching. It's good to have you, Living Streams. I am joined today by David Stockton on our Deep Dive podcast.
Yes.
He's not been hard to find, but he's been hard to find on the podcast world for a little bit.
Been a little break.
So it's good to have him back here. David, first of all, if you guys don't know this, happy birthday, David.
Let's go.
By the time you're watching this, it's not David's birthday anymore.
Yeah.
But today is David's birthday.
It is September 15th.
So David is obviously at the point in his life where
When
birthday celebrations involve sitting down for a podcast.
When I woke up this morning, turning 48 years old, I actually feel like I can see the world perfectly clear now. And what I'm about to say on this podcast today will solve all the world's problems.
There you go.
And all the dilemmas. And we will have no more issues if people just listen to the 48-year-old David.
There you go.
Everything before 48, I don't know. I don't really know what was going on there. But now that I'm 7 hours into my 48th year,
it's the year of enlightenment because you're harmonizing with Arizona State 48. You know,
four dozen.
It's a big deal.
Yep. No.
40 plus 8. You know.
Yeah.
40 plus 2 fours.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah,
so
something happened. No, it didn't happen. It didn't happen. I'm still cloudy.
No special different 48-year-old feeling this morning?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, happy birthday, David. I got to say that to you earlier. We had because you started off your birthday with some meetings.
Actually, I started off with some pickleball first.
Some pickleball. Man, you got up early, Mr. 48-year-old.
It was not a good day either. It was very sloppy.
Yeah, okay. Do you have that old man I'm waking up too early thing going on yet? Or are you just excited for pickleball?
Brittany's been getting up early because she's teaching now, so I'm kind of up earlier, and I've been sleeping great.
Many years ago, I worked at Coco's, which if you've never been to a Coco's, it seems like there's an unspoken rule that you're not allowed to enter the building unless you're at least 60 plus.
Yeah.
And I would open every once in a while. I think they opened at 5:30 or 6, I can't remember. And it would always surprise me. It'd be a weekday, be before 6 a.m., and there'd be a line of 20 people out the door.
Ready to go.
All retired. And I was just thinking, you're retired. What are you doing? Like, go home, go to bed. Get out of here. Come back later.
Well, I did find the secret out. Maybe it's because I'm older or whatever, but if you don't wake up early enough, then the summers in Arizona and even the edges of the summer are really miserable. But if you wake up early, like this morning, it was cold outside.
Yeah, it's doing all right.
For all those who are up before 7 or 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
So there's a little blessing there. But my daughter Bella made me breakfast this morning, which was nice.
What'd she make?
She made me a sausage and egg burrito.
Oh, nice.
It was real good.
A breakfast burrito, birthday burrito.
Yes. I've been eating all day, which is great.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, we've been chugging through the book of Acts. Have we had you on the podcast? I think once for Acts or not at all?
Nope.
So we got some Acts general thoughts to bring. Which is nice. You've been preaching a lot in this series, but not preaching every message. So you got some thoughts there that we haven't gotten to hit. So let's start there. So Book of Acts, we've shared it on the podcast a little bit, but from your perspective, which really you were the one who's pulling us into the Book of Acts on the preaching team, on the content team. So why are we in the Book of Acts, David?
Yeah, well, I actually thought CJ said it really well on Sunday, how we're doing 2 chapters a week because we want everyone to feel the Book of Acts, not just like study the Book of Acts.
Yeah.
We want them to feel the happening, the momentum of the Spirit, is I think what CJ said, and so I mean I think that's really, it's happened already within our organization, within the congregation. The reason I haven't been on the podcast as much is I basically became responsible for our youth. Starting last May, really. So it's been April even. So it's been about 5 months of really just giving a lot of time and attention there. And it's cool because even there you can feel that. And this last Sunday we kicked off our new high school class. Yeah. And we had 60 high schoolers there. Ooh. And we had a whole brand new leadership team that, each one of them I can actually say is experiencing Book of Acts type movement in their life right now, where they're becoming more aware of the calling of God. They're becoming more aware of the need but it's also a desire of theirs to actually be sent, to be served, to go after, to chase. And even like Wednesday mornings, we're going to Washington High School, and I just have so many young people saying, "Hey, when can I come? Can I come? I want to be there." And it's funny now. It's like it was just supposed to be a few of us hanging out.
Yeah.
But even yesterday, I had other people saying, "Hey, we'd like to be leaders. Could we?" But it's just like God is on the move, and people are wanting to kind of to jump, almost like a wave is coming, and you see all those surfers lined up.
Yeah.
They're all wanting to catch this wave, and I feel like the book of Acts does that. Like we've said, it does to the believer what Mentos does to Diet Coke.
Yeah. I see you've been rocking those socks lately.
Yeah.
Somebody from the
I'm gonna
church
wear them
bought
on
us all
Sunday.
Mentos socks.
I'm gonna wear them on Sunday. One Diet Coke sock, one Mentos sock. A lady brought a bunch of those to our staff to kind of like encourage us to keep going. But yeah, just that wave that's happening. But the truth is the Spirit is always on the move. God is always on the move. Aslan's always on the move.
Yeah.
And yet it's the Holy Spirit that helps us become aware of what God is already up to. And once some people start catching it, I think it is somewhat contagious. So that book of Acts has been great so far.
Yeah. The book of Acts will do that, man. It sure does get in you and get moving. Kurt and I had a good conversation. One of the things we were talking about last week, so sorry for the recap for those of you guys who were here, but I don't remember what it was that Kurt was saying. That I think it was just kind of Kurt's lens for it a little bit. But, like when you're looking at the book of Acts, it almost becomes like this archetypal aspiration that has, like for the church, that also has the reality of human mess in it, right? So we were talking about you might even be the one who gave me this framework, but I don't think you made it up, of like, whenever you're looking for like how things ought to be, we can look at the bookends of the Bible. We can look at Genesis before the fall, and we can look at Revelation when he comes back. And the book of Acts is almost like in step with that rhythm a little bit of like, well, here's the beginning of the church as we know it. Here's the beginning of we have the Holy Spirit. Here's the beginning of us, of history working out the reality that Jesus has redeemed us. And so there is that kind of like Genesis, this is the way it should be. And we tend to look at that, right? People say, well, the early church this, the early church that. We have deacons and elders because there are deacons and elders in the book of Acts. And even like a church like Living Streams, we're like, we feel like we should have deacons. So we have a team of deacons that we never quite can do as much with as those individuals could do, because we're just like, we got to model this. It's somehow, we got to, even if it feels like we're shoehorning it. But then you also have the other side of the book of Acts, which is all that mess and all that gunk and the racial tension and the interpersonal conflict and all that. Yeah. And it's, I don't know, there's just something about it that gets you stirred up, I think, to, can we aspire to that? And then if you pay close attention, it's like, but it's nice because it seasons that with the reality of like, we're going to get in fights. We're going to have pressure points. Yeah, for sure. I think, partially going through and in some ways, one of the lenses we wanted to put on the book of Acts was looking at the individual evangelists. So the whole church, is filled with the Spirit in Acts 2, but Peter stands up and preaches the gospel. And then people are saved. And then again, a couple chapters later, Peter stands up and preaches the gospel. So it's almost like there's Peter the evangelist, and he has a style. He has a way that he carries out that. And it actually evolves over the book of Acts, even to the point where God gives him the vision and says, Peter, stop calling unclean what I've made clean, speaking about the Gentiles. And it was almost like he had to be developed in his gospel and what his understanding of the gospel, in his way of delivering the gospel. And then you have after that, Stephen, who in such a immensely horrific moment, preaches his gospel. And it's much more, you could almost see the teacher side of him, right? He goes through the whole Old Testament, constantly pointing to Christ before the Sanhedrin, and then is actually stoned to death. And his example and his words, both ring out powerfully. And then right after that, Philip preaches the gospel, and it's not met with opposition. It's actually received in this beautiful Samaritan revival that takes place. And then an Ethiopian kind of revival takes place.
if you're tracking through. And then all of a sudden the lens shifts one more time to this guy named Saul, right? And you got a little Barnabas in there, but Saul becomes really the focus of the rest of the book, starting in chapter 13.
Yeah.
And the way that he evangelized, he preached. And even Saul, obviously had a massive evolution where he converted from being, a worshiper of God, Yahweh, and rejecter of Christ and persecutor of Christ, to where he realized, oh, wait a second, the God that I've been faithfully trying to serve all my life is Jesus, and he is the Messiah, and that massive conversion. And then he goes around proclaiming to the Jews with some degree of frustration, some degree of success, but to the Gentiles is really where he's sent. And so just, it's just, all of them are imperfect. All of them come to the gospel from someplace. All of them are filled with the Spirit. And then there's this process, there's this working out of their salvation, working out of their gospel understanding, working out of their evangelistic realities. And so that's another lens that we've been trying to see with all of these guys. And Acts 13 is so awesome, which was preached on Sunday, is Paul's first missionary journey. So we're getting the first look at what Paul was learning to do. And each one of his missionary journeys after are a little different. I mean, he says the same basic method, but you can see he's learning, he's shifting, he's adapting little by little as he goes. And then what's so fun is we have all of his writings in the New Testament where, the epistles are him unpacking the things he's learned in his missionary journeys. Oh, it's just some fun stuff. Yeah,
and applying them, I think, to some extent too, right? Here's the people we're discipling, and it is. It's a pretty exciting thing. I love that on Sunday, CJ. I mean, there's a lot to talk about on Sunday, but in the sermon part, CJ made a pivot to here's some tools. We've been talking about the Book of Acts. We've been talking about evangelism, but here's a method that we can apply to help us kind of wrap our mind around, here's a way that we could share the gospel a little bit. So even a little bit of that, as Paul's kind of figuring this out, as we see this methodology of sharing the gospel, if you kind of pick that apart, you can realize that there is this arc here. And I know you were, interestingly enough, you were sharing in Living Streams Espanol this Sunday, I think on the same passage, right? But anyway,
well, it's interesting, the response. So I preached the same message, Acts 13 and 14. Living Streams Espanol, 9 a.m. while CJ was preaching over here, and just again, Paul taking the gospel to the public square, boldly, knowing there was immense danger, and actually getting stoned to death, so to speak, because they stoned him until he was literally lying unconscious and they thought he was dead. That's why they stopped. They all went back into the city. After that, some of Paul's friends or other Christians in the city came out to just to check on the body, to take the body and bury it. But he came too, which is just wild. And literally, so that was the context there. And so with that being said, we were really telling people the Spirit compels us to take the gospel to the public square. The Spirit compels us. If we want to be filled with the Spirit, which we all do so badly, we have to realize that to be filled with the Spirit is to be compelled to take the gospel to people who don't know the gospel. And sometimes that is met with really, really, really heavy, challenging things. And I had a lady come, actually, I was running, I walked out calmly from the gym of Living Streams Espanol, and I was just starting to run over to the high school meeting because we were kicking off our high school class. And a lady from Living Streams Espanol ran up and stopped me. She said, yes. She said, that's so important. She said, but how do we take the gospel to the homosexuals? And I mean, it was funny because I was like, can you email me?
Yeah.
Like, we need to talk about this. You're asking the perfect question. This is so right. But I literally have to run to this meeting. So, but email me so that, you know, we can then have a conversation and we can get you some resources and all these things, because that's the perfect response of, okay, yes, we have to take the gospel into, you know, the uttermost parts of the earth is what Acts says. But sometimes the most unlikely places, the Samarias, the uttermost parts, the Gentiles, all these people that, you know, God wants us to take the gospel to, and we may or may not want to do that.
Yeah.
But I think the LGBTQ plus community, it's 100% a place that we are supposed to carry the gospel, the good news of Christ into. For me right now, the Lord just put on Washington High School on my heart maybe a year ago. And I just kind of been sitting on it, chewing on it, trying to figure out how to not be some weird old guy that's going up to a high school. And then just started thinking this summer, well, when school starts, what about some donuts and some energy drinks just off campus, you know, as kids are walking to school. And yeah, we're missing all the kids who drive to school or get dropped off to school, but still, what about those kids walking to school, and why are they walking to school? You know, maybe they just live close by, or maybe there's some socioeconomic challenges. And what we found was the international reality of the kids who walk to Washington High School on Wednesday mornings at, you know, 8:15 has been unbelievable. I mean, all over the world. Yeah. And just that little bit of a moment to say, hey, what's your name? And they tell you their name, and I mean, I can't even pronounce most of the names that they're saying, but there's a name exchange, and then there's a donut, not exchange, there's a donut gift and an energy drink, and there's just a little time and a little like, you know, where are you from, or like, how long you've been going to Washington, what year are you? Just asking these questions and starting to get to know this person. They're warming up to us so much. They're actually like, some of the kids getting dropped off now are coming off campus to come where the donuts are and get some donuts. And then I told this story in Living Streams Espanol.
How many dozen are you buying now?
Well, the first time JT from Open Door Christian, or Open Door Fellowship, he heard about it and he wanted to join. He brought 10 dozen. And we didn't quite use all of them, but we've been taking about 5 dozen. Yeah, it's costing a little bit, but seems like the right thing to do right now. I don't know how long we can sustain it. But this last Wednesday, I told the story in Espanol, was, you know, we're just taking, you know, the love of Christ into this public place. And the reception has been really warm. And even we had the principal and 3 vice principals come in golf carts, and we were praying. We opened our eyes, and they were just standing there, and we were kind of nervous, but they just said, we just wanted to check. We heard about this, and actually, you know, we're kind of glad you guys are out here, because we want to have eyes on, you know, on all of the students walking up, making sure they're safe, and sometimes at the park right next to us there can be some weird things, and so anyways, but one of the kids this last Wednesday. One of the last ones, he walked up, he crossed the street, he got a donut from us and got an energy drink, and we were just talking with him, and he was just smiling and staying there, answering our questions, and then we'd kind of like, you know, stop talking just because we wanted him to be able to go to class, and he didn't go, and he just stayed there, and then we talked a little bit more, asked him a few more questions, and then, you know, we kind of were like easing it up, because it's getting close to 9 o'clock now where he's supposed to be there, and he just smiling and standing there, and it was really cool because Cliff Caesar, he was with us, and he just said, hey man, you want us to pray for you? And he said, I would love that. And so it was like, I don't know if he knew what he was waiting for, but he just knew there's something was going on. And so we prayed for him, and he just received it, and he just walked away so smiley, and his name was Prince. And so excited to kind of spend some more time with Prince and see what the Lord's already doing in his life, right? And just to try and maybe hopefully help him become more aware of what the Spirit of God is already doing in his life. And, so that was kind of a fun little story. But that's Acts 13, taking the gospel into the public square.
Yeah, that's what we're really hoping to see, is like to see Living Stream start doing that kind of stuff, that kind of simple thing, just sharing the gospel with people. And I think we spent so long I don't know, just it seems like there's been a shift. We spent so long telling people like, hey, like, you should share the gospel only slowly when you know someone and you've been with them for many, many years. And that's still a really good and way to evangelize, and probably still maybe a good primary evangelistic tool. Yeah. But in that long relational. But it just really feels, I don't know if you agree with this or not, but it feels to me like we're in a season where it can be short relational evangelism. I think the gospel is always best shared relationally, but that doesn't mean it can't be come in, have a quick interaction relationship. Let me show you that I care for you because I have the love of Christ, and that's a pretty powerful thing. And it doesn't take years to show someone that you love them with Jesus' love and share the gospel with you. And sometimes it's
evangelism and discipleship, right? Like evangelism can just be a moment. You know, discipleship takes days and decades.
Yeah.
So I think there's a balance to that for sure.
Yeah. And hopefully, it's not just like sniping. You know, it's not just get in, get out, get in, gospel, get out. Hopefully, it's get in, gospel, discipleship. Yeah. You know, so hopefully sometimes I met a random person at the grocery store. I shared the gospel with them, and now 15 years later, they're a pastor, and I'm serving right alongside them. Yeah. You know.
Yeah, but evangelism, obviously, that's a big thing for us right now. The Book of Acts is laying the foundation for that. I mean, our fam nights coming up are going to be somewhat focused on that, and we even feel like all into next year, 2026. This is really something the Lord is calling us to, and another story to encourage that as well is, so this last Friday, I was doing a tree job, which is something me and another guy do trees, from time to time. What's up, Saul, if you're listening? And we were out in Mesa cutting this giant eucalyptus tree. Like, we bit off more than we could chew. And it was, you know, somehow a lady got our phone number and asked us about it. And her dad was actually there with us. And and he was just this really nice guy. And he actually started helping us a little bit here and there. And then, you know, towards the end of the day, you know, we had kind of hammed it up a little bit, and he literally walked up to us, you know, to give us the money, the cash for the day, and he started to tear up, and he just said, you know, I want to thank you guys so much for what you've done for us, and I think what he's meaning is, you know, in some ways it was a big job, and it was probably going to cost thousands of dollars, and you know, because we're not a legitimate company, you know, in that sense, it's like, and we're also just trying to make a little cash. It started trying to raise money for Belize, but now, you know, we've been able to make a little cash, you know, for our families. So we don't charge a ton, but I think he just was, and he'd seen all the work and the effort that we'd put in. And again, that's what was happening. Maybe it was some of the camaraderie that was happening with us and him or whatever, but he had tears in his eyes, and then as we were packing things up, he came up to me kind of in a real solemn way and said, hey, I was raised Catholic. And Saul had told them that I was a pastor. So he said, can I give you your phone number, and can you help me find a place? He said, we're looking for something. And so I got his number, and I actually texted him today and all of these things. And but it was just another reminder of the Holy Spirit is already out there working. Yeah. He's already out there stirring. And there's a cultural moment in at least Phoenix, Mesa, maybe America. Yeah. Sounds like other places as well right now, where there's a different climate when it comes to Christ and evangelism, and it seems like there are a lot more people, at least at a place, saying, I don't know what is right and true. I know secularism is not right and true. I know that all of these worldly ideologies are not producing righteousness, justice, and peace. I know, like, it's like they're aware of all of the facade, all of the counterfeits, all of the lies, and it's made them to where if you, in your life example, or if in your words and speech, could have something that seems to promote righteousness, justice, and peace, it seems like people are saying, hey, can I hear more about that?
Yeah.
Like Prince, hey, I'm feeling something different right here than I'm feeling in other places. Can I stay? Can you, what do we do?
Yeah.
Where do we go from here? What must I do to be saved is almost like the question his body was asking. And then this guy, in some ways, that's kind of what it seemed like he was asking was, hey, what do I do to get to a place of peace?
Yeah.
Because I'm not really feeling it right now. And again, this was Friday of last week, and last week was an immensely
it's a
heavy week for many reasons.
Yeah. Let's talk about that a little bit. I know CJ did a really good job kind of meeting us.
He's all fired
there.
up.
Yeah. Meeting us
feeling it.
there on Sunday. And I think that was a pretty important thing because it's even, even what happened with Charlie Kirk being assassinated. It's more than hit a nerve, but among way more than that, it did hit a nerve, and it hit a little bit. I think kind of the uniqueness of who he was as a political figure who more and more imperfectly, and again, CJ said that so wonderfully. Like, of course he was flawed.
Yeah.
Imperfect though he was someone who was saying, hey, I do want to grow in maturing in my understanding and communication of the fact that I have these political thoughts. But really, if you can hear me say anything, I want you to hear me say Jesus. And I don't know if you caught his wife's address.
Some of it
did. Yeah. And I would say even that, I thought she did that beautifully. I mean, at the end of the day, he's a political talking head. That's a big part of what he does. Something he was passionate, something he felt called to. And so even she was addressing that, with quite a bit of passion. But really, if there was one thing I heard from her address was, hey, come to know Jesus. And the buzz since then has been people heard that. Churches across the country had a notable bump in attendance. We saw it a little bit this Sunday as well. Little bump in our in-person attendance. I noticed if you looked at the numbers, our online numbers didn't come in yet, but we did see a bit of a bump in-person attendance even.
Well, last week, here's how I process. Here's how I walked through last week. For what it's worth, and I know everybody got hit in different ways with last week, but so obviously Wednesday, the assassination of Charlie Kirk, and kind of that brief moment of wondering if he's going to live or not, the shock of the just the public, and literally on video, and then with our viral reality these days, just the shock of all of that, and then the sadness of all of that, and then the anger and confusion and question, and just all of those things stirred up in me, just like everybody else. And then 9/11 was Thursday, right? Where many people had already planned to kind of step back into that grief and remember. And as a nation, we have this collective grief in some ways, that 9/11 is this reminder of a really tragic day for so many people, and then 9/11 is my mom's birthday, so she's been gone for 20 years, and it was her birthday. So it was funny. I mean, all week I was looking at Thursday and trying to carve out a little time for me to go and remember, to go and enter into grief. I've learned over the years to try and make grief my friend, so that he doesn't become my enemy. So I got to spend enough time with grief, just to make sure there's not a lot of pressure there. And so I already planned to pull out pictures of my mom and just kind of like enter into that space and just, hurt and be grateful and remember. And he, my daughter's never met her. So like share a little bit of mom with her. And it was just interesting how it hit me where I was like, I literally had scheduled some grief time on Thursday. And then now I had a whole bunch of other stuff that potentially, that was grievous. That was really disturbing. And then I started getting texts, on Wednesday evening and Thursday from people in the church, and actually, interestingly enough, from some people who are brand new to the Lord, some people from different political backgrounds, or even I just have no idea what their political bent is because some it's just never come up. But them saying, "Man, I'm feeling really disturbed. Is the church doing anything?" And some of them I think were asking specifically about Charlie Kirk. Some of them were still just reeling from the stabbings, the school shootings. Even this summer, the congressman or the congresswoman in Minnesota or whatever. Like, it's just, every once in a while it's just like, I just can't take anymore. My cup is full. Mm-hmm. And so is there space? And so it started out with me just responding to people saying, hey, we have every Friday at 6:30, we have a prayer room service where Edwin and some others, they lead worship and kind of host the presence of God and try and, share the scriptures a little bit, but just in a real prayerful way. Yeah. And so I just said, hey, we got that going on. Then I texted Edwin. I said, hey, is it okay if we let everybody kind of know, because this week's been so heavy, that there's this prayer room service? And he was like, yeah, for sure, 100%. I actually texted you. I said, hey, you covered? I'm on a tree job, so I'm not positive I can be there. And you jumped in. And so it was cool because then word went out that said, hey, if you're feeling heavy about the events of this week and all the things going on, we want to invite you to this prayer service that we have. And some people didn't know that it's an every Friday thing, but it is an every Friday thing.
Which is an every Friday thing.
Which is an every Friday thing.
6:30 p.m.
Yeah.
Building D.
And
Tuesday mornings at 8 a.m.
And so it sounds like, a bunch of people came out or that don't normally come out. And I texted a couple of those people. They said it was just wonderful. It was exactly what they were longing for. And then I had someone email me and say, kind of like, hey, why are we doing this, political move for Charlie Kirk when we're not, having prayer nights for other situations that maybe aren't so conservative? And I haven't responded to that one, but it's like, no, this is something we do every Friday night. Yeah. And we just invited people who were feeling heavy to come and do this. But then I also had other people say, thanks so much for doing that prayer vigil for Charlie Kirk. And it was like, well, we didn't do a prayer vigil for Charlie Kirk. We just opened up as a church for a grieving community and said, if you want to come and spend time in the presence of God or seeking his presence, that's what we're here for. That's the whole thing. So again, like, I'm processing this all on my own. Then here comes these things. I'm not even on Instagram getting, the divided story. I'm just getting it from text messages and emails within our own community. Yeah. It had that little bit of 2020 feel. Yeah. But not as intense. And especially Friday, I was just, up a tree cutting it the whole day. But then Sunday morning, so Saturday and Sunday, Saturday was a birthday party for me. So I tried to just rejoice in my family and in the years. And Sunday morning, I woke up just with this really, really interesting feeling of just a new sadness that I wasn't preaching that Sunday. Like, I wasn't going to be with Living Streams, adults in that service because I was scheduled to preach in Living Streams Espanol because Mario had to go to Ecuador kind of as a last minute thing for something going on there. And so I said I would do it, but it was hard for me to think. And then I was going to be with the high school class, which we've been planning for months. And I woke up and I actually called CJ and I was just like, hey, just want you just want you to know, like, this is a big moment for our church, that the sense I had was just people's hearts have been tilled, and there's just a kind of rawness that's going to require more of a pastor and a shepherd than a teacher and a leader. Like right now, what we're needing is just some real pastoral care. And it's funny because CJ was kind of going, man, I need a pastor. Like he's like, I'm really feeling so stirred up by all of these things, and so it was cool to be able to talk. And we had talked a lot on Thursday, and we had actually met on Monday before. Like, so I mean, I was as united with CJ as maybe any week we have. And so I just knew what the word that was stirring in his heart. I knew Acts 13 and how it was pointing. It was basically like, in some ways, the idea of taking the gospel to the public square was now being echoed in some interesting way within the culture. And that's coming straight out of Acts 13. So I felt great about all those things, and ended up just saying, okay, Lord, thank you for showing me how much I love these people. Like it would killed me to not be, but I'll be there this Sunday and be able to just kind of like, oh, I just feel so good being with you guys in these moments. But it was also good that I was not in there on Sunday morning because the fire alarm went off and somebody had to turn that thing off. And I actually figured out how to silence it. And I know a lot about our fire system now from Sunday. But yeah, so that was kind of how I processed the week leading up to Sunday with all of that news and all of those things. And then I was really looking forward today to be able to now talk about some of the things I think about Charlie Kirk. Yeah. Some of the things I think we should learn and kind of, like parse out in the life and message of Charlie Kirk, and how it relates to the church, and it relates to culture, and how it relates to politics and all these things. So I've kind of been very quiet. I've just been listening. I've just been studying. I've just been thinking, and again, hoping to offer something that could be somewhat pastoral for our people or whoever's listening to the podcast today in regards to Charlie Kirk.
Yeah, well, let's do that in a second. I just wanted to quick chime in a little thing. Which this isn't a new revelation for anybody, hopefully, especially in a post 2020 online reality. But it's interesting for me because I haven't deleted any of my social media, but I'm not on them. In fact, I went to get on Instagram, I think 2 weeks ago, and I realized that my phone had done that thing where it deletes an app that you haven't been on for 2 months or something. And I was like, hey, I get a pat on the back because I got to re-download this to look at that. Do. Like, I didn't even know it's been that long. My phone's like, you don't use this anymore. Yeah. But on Sunday morning, so this is where my headspace was at. At some point, I had a little bit of downtime, and I went on. There's like a fruit tree growers Facebook group for like Phoenix. Super random, niche, weird, whatever. But there's some useful local info that you can get there sometimes, that what's going on in the season or whatever you can't get anywhere else. So I was like, I got 5 minutes. I'll pop on there. Probably the first time I've been on Facebook for a while, but not 2 months though, because it wasn't deleted. And I went on there, and then obviously when I got on there, even just scrolling down to find that little Facebook group, there's all these posts, you know what I mean? And I'm all of a sudden, and up until this point, up until Sunday, my only interaction, only social media I'm on usually is YouTube, which I leave on my TV on the wall, not really on my phone, unless I'm like looking up how to fix my car or something like that. Yeah. And so I've seen a little bit of the political talking heads saying this or that or whatever, seen some of the legacy media chiming in here or there. But getting on Facebook, immediately I'm slapped with some vitriol. You know what I mean? Like I'm hit with someone we both know and love who is kind of in a different corner of the church, reposting something pretty gnarly, pretty dishonoring, pretty like, hey, here's the line in the sand and has to do with Charlie. And if you're not on my side of the line, then you don't know Jesus. And just kind of, And I realized, oh man, I was all of a sudden hit with this flood of like,
Yeah.
this is so much worse when you are checking in with this stuff on a regular basis.
Yeah.
People are still not engaging on these platforms are encouraging us
Yeah.
to have clear, divisive opinions that do not care for people, that are very arrogance and superiority are incentivized on there, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And it was just another reminder for me of like, yeah, this stuff isn't worth it. This isn't worth anything. Your interaction with the events of the last week are so much healthier if you're unplugged from the daily wash of that social media, and you're still informed. I still know what happened.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know how all these people that I once was close to, or people that I don't even know, are yelling as though they're in rush hour traffic.
Yeah. I think when my practice with news now, like just if I'm going to watch the news on TV or even like go to a website to get some news, I mean, I jokingly am saying, well, how long does it take for me to get the actual news? Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's usually less than 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And if you stay, if you stay reading or if you stay watching for more than 5 minutes, you're literally either regurgitating that or you're just fully into the spin, right?
Yep.
You're just into opinion. And I mean, that's really what, in some ways, Instagram, Facebook is at this point. It's just it's opinions.
Yeah.
And so if you're wanting to have thousands of opinions about everything, you can get all the opinions you want in the world, but life does seem to be a little simpler when you're dealing with the opinions of the people you're connected to.
Yeah.
I mean, and sometimes that's a lot, just that. But yeah, I think obviously, you know, there are moments though that do require engagement. And there are instances that do require response. I mean, I think I had some people reach out and just basically say, like, you know, are you going to write something about this, or you know, what's the church's response to this? And it's funny, my practice, which is, you know, kind of the way it's always been, is I think, you know, I'd like to give it a couple weeks before I really attempt to give an opinion.
Yeah.
And that's frustrating in today's culture or whatever, but at the same time, I think it's saved us from a lot of nonsense, and particularly saved our church from steering into a lot of different directions.
Yeah.
And some of it is I'm just a little slow, you know, like I'm just, takes me a while to figure things out, but also just because there's a lot of information to process and things. And yet now, I mean, when it comes to Charlie Kirk, obviously a lot more processing and all of that to come, but after being in the book of Acts 13 and 14, and even coming up on 15, 16 this Sunday, this is a bit of my take on Charlie Kirk, who I'm pretty familiar with. I mean, I'm not like I don't listen to the podcast that much or whatever, but I know a lot of people who do. And I think Charlie Kirk, over the, I guess, 13 years of public, I mean, because 18 is when I guess he was starting, even though the last, you know, probably 5 or 6 is where he became very internationally public. I think you had a guy that was primarily political, and obviously conservative and all of those things, nationalistic. And at some point in there, I think he genuinely really found Jesus, found the gospel. And I think what I saw happening over the years was a purifying of his gospel. Like at first, I think his gospel, like to him, it was like, let's just slap Jesus on this conservative stuff. And then at some point over time, it really was, well, there's conservatism or nationalism, and there's Jesus and Christianity, and maybe they're not so intricately intertwined. And then I even saw one post where someone was calling him a Christian nationalist. He says, actually, hold on. He said, I am a Christian and I am a nationalist, but I really don't put those two things together, which again, I think people would say, yeah, right, you do put those things together. But I think, again, this was, and maybe this is the benefit of the doubt, and I don't know Charlie Kirk in any way, shape, or form, but I think I was watching him be able to see, wait a second, there is a line here. And then this last season, he really did say that the main thing he wants to be known for is what he did for the Christian faith, what he did for the gospel. And it seemed to even be his interactions on the campuses started to have a little bit of a different feel, to where it wasn't so combative. There was some compassion in there, as well as the boldness and the courage. And so that's where, again, when I think of Peter in the book of Acts, when he first started preaching, he'd spent 3 years with Jesus in the flesh. Spirit comes upon him. He starts preaching, and he's preaching, you got to believe in Jesus. You got to follow the works of the law. You got to be circumcised. You got to be male, and you got to be Jewish if you really want to receive the Spirit. That's not a good gospel. And over time and over processing with the Lord and continued preaching, he eventually got to the place where it was like, you know what? It's just faith. It's just believing in Jesus. All of those other things, they don't count. Now, they do matter, you know. There are things that matter, like the law is something that is helpful, but it's not a salvation thing. It's Jesus alone. It's just Jesus. And again, I could be wrong because I don't know, but just in my parsing out the life and message of Charlie Kirk, because I feel like I saw someone who was getting a purified gospel year after year, and you know, obviously in a multitude of words there is much sin, is what Proverbs said, and I saw one guy posting some things that in his mind were bad or evil that Charlie Kirk said, and he's like, hey, this is Charlie Kirk in his own words, which is totally unfair, and in some ways I thought, like, the context of these is very lacking, and yet what he was trying to express is, you know, I've been hurt, or people like me, and he's in the LGBTQ plus community, he's like, people like me have been hurt by some of the words of Charlie Kirk, and again, CJ did this on Sunday. Hurt and offended are two different things. And I don't know if our world quite understands the difference right now, because there is nothing more offensive than the gospel. What CJ said is like, I'm offending my kids all the time when I'm telling them no, or when I'm telling them they can't, or I'm telling them to do this. They're always offended, but they're not hurt.
Would you say wronged or offended? Maybe is that kind of what you're getting at with hurt?
Well, I don't.
Wronged and offended not being.
Explain what you mean.
Well, I mean, like, wronged means if you wronged me, you did something wrong to me. If I'm offended, it's still TBD whether did you do something wrong or have I misunderstood? Are you saying am I offended
when
and
you get
I'm
offended,
actually in the
it
wrong?
hurts? You're having trouble with the word hurt?
Because rather the distinction between
because if you're wronged,
hurt and
you can
offense.
be hurt. If you're offended, it can hurt. But wronged and offended, I see what you're saying. I mean,
is that kind of
that's
close?
Fine.
Kind of sort of what you're saying is like hurt as like the other party did something wrong. To me.
And that's where it's like, I mean, I think the Bible is offensive to our sinful nature, to our flesh, to our worldly context, to our worldly understanding. It's a sword. It's a double-edged sword. And the more you take it, the more it does cut and divide asunder soul and spirit and all those things, like Hebrews 4 says. A bad understanding of what the Bible is saying can be offensive, hurtful, wronging too. If you're so for example, if your understanding of if someone is coming to you and saying, hey, because you're gay, God doesn't love you, he doesn't want you, he doesn't forgive you, he can't save you. Well, that's pretty offensive in a bad way. That's pretty hurtful. That's pretty wronging. But it's wronging because it's wrong. Because God is saying, actually, you're a sinner. I died to restore you to me. So it's not, hey, this group of people, they're out.
irreconcilably. It's like, no, actually everybody's out irreconcilably until Jesus reconciles us to himself.
Yeah, I saw another take of Charlie Kirk, and this I think was in these recent years, where a transgender lady was at one of these universities and was engaging in the debate or conversation, whatever it was, with him, and ultimately what he said was, "Hey, I really, this is what I really want for you. I don't want you to be at war with your body. Like I would love for you to be able to find peace with the way that you were born, the way that you were made." And again, there's a difference in that, right? Where that's still offensive because, at this point in her life, she was thinking that her body was wrong and her feelings or emotions or her mind was right in these thoughts that she was having. And it was so interesting to see her respond to it, because she actually received it as kind of like, that's interesting. I wasn't really expecting that. And in ways, he's kind of like, hey, anybody that anybody's making noise or booing, I was like, be quiet. This is a person that we need to love.
Yeah.
So I just saw it was like I saw the gospel kind of growing and growing and growing. And that's happened in a number of, public figures. And it happened in Peter. It happened in Saul. Yeah. Obviously, he was thinking Jesus wasn't the Messiah, and he had this big switch to, oh man, Jesus is the Messiah. And then even Apollos later on in Acts, we're not there yet, but Paul said Ananias and Sapphira, Priscilla and Aquila to go and help him more fully understand the gospel, even though he was already preaching. And it's just a reminder to me, who's a preacher, who's out there trying to spread the gospel, that my gospel constantly needs to be purified.
Yeah.
And I think in our politically volatile kind of politics, because of President Trump, potentially, but maybe it's just this season in our American experiment.
Yeah.
Like, it's really hard to separate anything from politics. It's just so everywhere. And again, I think our pure gospel does give us a certain politic, like it does influence our politic in a lot of ways. But we have to make sure the gospel is pure and not a political gospel, because that's basically the word gospel was hijacked from a political party back in Roman days, where it was the gospel of Caesar, right? It was the good news that Caesar has conquered and Caesar has brought peace to the Pax Romana, and it was like, basically they were saying, no, there's another gospel. Yeah. There's another kingdom that is separate and better and all of these things. And so I think we constantly need that purification of our gospel. And I feel like I saw that happening in Charlie Kirk's life. And I'm praying that for all the believers around the world and all of the responses, to Charlie Kirk or whatever else might come and cause massive, emotions in our country, but that we'd continue to figure out how to let the Spirit purify our gospel.
Yeah. And to your point, as Proverbs says, they're like, in abundance of sin, or in abundance of words, sin is not absent. Is there definite video evidence of him sinning, crossing the line, saying things that are untrue, coming after someone in a way that, of course there is. You know what I mean? Like that guy was on camera for a living, In
the multitude of words, there is much sin.
We've been doing this podcast for a couple of years. I guarantee you can find me saying something really off, you saying something really off. And we're talking as friends, shoulder to shoulder, who agree on stuff, So yeah. And then I think the other thing that's worth kind of spending a little bit of time talking about is, and I guess you hit this a little bit already, is like this weird thing of how your influence for the gospel. So you and I as pastors, we're very careful when we speak about things that are political, because our calling in life is not driving political movement. Our calling in life is driving the movement of the church. But then as pastors, that means that sometimes, hey, this stuff comes up. We got to talk about Charlie Kirk or this or that or whatever, 2020. And I was glad I was out of the country for that. You guys got to deal with that without me.
Party.
And you have to navigate, okay, like how do we meet these things? But also the last thing I want is your capacity to hear me talk about Jesus be compromised because of the way I weighed in on an issue that has many solutions and many problems.
Yeah.
And
it was just so, when I think about Charlie Kirk, like, it's just so interesting that we're teaching the book of Acts chapter 13 on the same day. And again, the whole message of Acts 13 is Paul and Barnabas just start going boldly into the public square, boldly into places where they know they will be opposed, and they bring the gospel to bear. And I just, as I kept reading and studying and I just could not help but think, like, Charlie Kirk did that.
Yeah.
You know, in a way that, definitely imperfect potentially, but I don't know if anybody's taken the gospel so courageously into adverse public environments than Charlie Kirk in a long time. I mean, Billy Graham obviously, but he was even then he was bringing people to a spot. But this guy was going into universities knowing he was going to have opposition, and he suffered tons of opposition in many places. And then ultimately, that's where one of the questions somebody asked me early on was, how much do you think this was an assassination because of political reasons, and how much was this assassination based on, persecution reasons? And that was just kind of an interesting question, where obviously, I mean, assassination, the actual word, has to do with political, intent, like trying to move people that way. But we were going through the book of Acts, where Paul in Acts 13 was actually stoned to death. Like they literally tried to kill him in that public square, you know? And so, I don't know, there's a part of me that just was like, as his gospel is getting purer and purer, as he's maybe making that the main thing now, which he said that's what he wanted to be remembered for. Part of me just wonders about the spiritual reality and that's how the gospel spread in the book of Acts, was through the death of the martyrs, was the seed of the spread.
Well, I don't think he was assassinated for school choice.
Yeah.
I mean, you can kind of, I've had that exact thought and question. I think it is a blurry thing.
Yeah.
And
well, and that's the trickiness of Charlie Kirk, because he really was both of those things.
And I think that's even what I was trying to get at, is like, it's a lot easier in some ways it was easier for him. In some ways it's a lot easier for us.
Because we're not political pundits.
Because he's a political pundit. So it's like, that's what he's doing. And he's bringing Jesus into that, which makes it very difficult for some people to hear him say anything about Jesus.
Yeah.
But so really what he's doing is he's bringing people to hear his opinion, to hear his thoughts, to hear his musings, biblical, unbiblical, Charlie Kirk, Jesus, whatever.
Yeah.
And then in that, he slowly is starting to say, actually, like, yes, I care about school choice. Yes, I care about this or that political issue, immigration here, there, whatever. But like, can you hear me say G? Like, and he hadn't quite hit the point, I don't think, where he's willing to say, like, you can ignore me on these other things. Let's just talk about Jesus. He's a political pundit, but he's bringing the gospel into that, in the same way that you were started off earlier saying, like, oh no, it was in a meeting earlier today. We weren't on camera, but you were telling someone about how people have a tendency to come to Living Streams and kind of heal up after getting banged up in other ministries. And part of that was maybe from the inception, Mark Buckley, our founding pastor, realizing, I got a lot of lawyers and doctors here, and they're working hard. I don't need to put a trip on them for not serving in children's ministry. I need to encourage them to bring the gospel into their job as lawyers and doctors. And it's a little bit of that. Like, we want our political pundits to be prioritizing the gospel even over their political message. But then the other tricky thing of that question is, how much was it assassination versus martyrdom? Is that there's some overlap of, like, well, he's following Jesus. I mean, the likely pinch point, it seems like right now, is there was probably something to do with identity politics and their identity, LGBTQ stuff. I mean, still TBD, but I mean, that place, I mean, I know that from my own personal family. It comes from a place of, I want what's best for you, and you believe that what I believe is best for you is going to be the death of you.
Yeah, and what I saw Charlie Kirk do was, I think for a long, long time, and this is, I think people who are conservative or people have certain ideas, they just weren't allowed to say anything for a long, long time. It was very, like the media was very clear, pushing certain ideas. And if you oppose those ideas, you couldn't be on Late Show. You couldn't be in Hollywood. Yeah. There was just a long time where, all the people who had more conservative views or at least views that weren't popular, they just weren't allowed to say anything. And I do think that somebody like Charlie Kirk, I've seen him make people feel a lot more comfortable sharing their views that aren't the same as Hollywood's views, or the late show talk hosts, whatever. And again, this is just more of kind of like on the political side of things. I think he really helped, and I think the young people have responded to that in really immense ways, where he had a major impact in young people. I mean, that's what's just been so wild, is how many high schoolers, are talking about Charlie Kirk, and college students, of course, talking so much about Charlie Kirk. And but I do think, in some ways, he gave people free speech in a really interesting way, in an interesting time in our country, and that is a double-edged sword as well, right? So now people are feeling bolder to say what they believe in political realms. And I mean, I think Trump did that as well. So it's like, for a long time, there was the liberal kind of reality felt free to say whatever they wanted in all the public square. Now it's like there's this new voice that's saying boldly what they believe in the public square, and almost like taking over the public square. And then there's this real strong response. Like, it's just this constant response. And so what I feel like, and one thing that I'm trying to parse out now in my own life, is at what point does boldness become toxic as well? Yeah. So it's like there's a good empathy, and there's a toxic empathy.
Yeah.
And there's a good boldness, and there's a toxic boldness. And obviously,
right thing, right way, right place.
Yeah, and obviously, I think the challenge of the book of Acts chapter 13, that I think Charlie Kirk's life is, we all should be more bold in our gospel. And at the same time, please, Lord, purify our gospel as we get more and more bold with it. But then at the same time, I'm just wanting to remind Christians who have strong political, leanings, all of that's good and fine and great, but also we have to remember, like, at what point is boldness become toxic?
Yeah.
And not helpful anymore.
Yeah.
And to try and find those lines. So there's a lot of parsing out to do, but we got to work out our salvation with fear and trembling. We got to have humility. Let everything we say be seasoned with grace and salt, which is a funny thing that Paul, right, one of the most bold proclaimers of all time, needs to say. But at the same time, Jesus did speak very clearly to the Pharisees and to what was false, and was bold about it. And you see Saul, even in Acts chapter 13, there's a guy, who's a magician, who's kind of got this whole weird thing. And Paul's like, hey, you're straight from Satan and you're going to be blind now. And it's like, well, that's offensive. Well, yeah, it's offensive because what he was doing was wrong. And it ended up leading to the salvation of the governor and stuff, which is cool. But so I'm not saying all boldness is toxic in any way. Yeah. We have to be bold for the truth, and we have to be bold against the decay of the church in America. But we also have to remember, that there is a time and a place too where boldness, I think, can be overdone. Yeah. And
I think it's worth.
And I'm not trying to say Charlie Kirk did or didn't do that, but it's just something I've been thinking about.
When my dad passed last year, I spent a lot of time thinking about. Well, one thing that felt like a big gift was realizing, like, hey, one of the things I can do to honor my dad, someone who valued children and family and marriages so much. And I said something about this maybe in the last year on here too, but I realized, like, I can honor my dad by really loving my wife and kids. That was what his life was about. Yeah. And I think what's cool to see is he's given that with Charlie Kirk. Hey, whether you followed him, didn't follow him, liked him, didn't like him, whether you voted the same way as him or not.
Yeah.
If you're a fellow believer, there's value in honoring someone, anyone all the time. There's a lot of value in honoring people. We're called to
and
do
learning
that.
from people.
And if you wanted to honor him, again, whether you agreed with him or not, one thing you probably can't agree with him as a believer is, hey, the priority of the gospel. And so if you're wanting to honor the guy, maybe acutely right now after he's recently passed, maybe go and boldly share the gospel with someone with love and affection and truth and wisdom and led by the Spirit.
Yeah.
That's a great way to honor him.
Well, it honors Jesus.
Yeah, even better.
That's what we're interested in.
Even
honoring
better.
Jesus. And that's why we've been doing the Great Commission every single Sunday,
Yep.
reciting it and then praying it.
Yep.
Because there's nothing that just doesn't seem like there's anything more important to Jesus. It's the last thing he gave to his disciples. He said, hey, please go and do this. And that's our commission out to you. And if anything that we've said on here is troubling or disturbing, feel free to reach out. I mean, we're a community that wants to process things out together. I mean, we
just figuring it out.
We do our best to bring the scriptures to bear. We do our best to kind of digest pastorally what's happening in the world and sharing those things. But in no means do we think we're perfect. In no means do we think we've got it nailed down, even though I'm 48 years old now. So really things have to be worked out in community. I mean, in the book of Acts, that's what happened. They've wrestled things out in community, but they all remembered at the same time that there's one Spirit and one Lord and one baptism. And that was enough to hold them together long enough so that they could work some of these things out. And so that ultimately the kingdom of Jesus was able to spread from that little Jerusalem and Antioch from the world over.
Amen.
Yeah.
Well, David, thanks so much for hanging today and chatting through this stuff. And thank you guys for being with us. We really appreciate you. And we will see you on Sunday.